Napoleon Bonaparte was a master of war, feared by kings, admired by soldiers, unmatched on the battlefield, and one of the most brilliant military strategists in history. He conquered large parts of Europe, rewrote legal systems, and shaped global politics. But even the greatest conquerors have their embarrassing moments. One of Napoleon's most ridiculous and least known defeats didn't happen on a battlefield. It happened in a field full of rabbits, literally. This battle he never saw coming. This one didn't involve armies or cannons, just fur, feet, and fangs. It wasn't fought in Russia, Austria, or Spain. It was fought on a quiet field against a relentless enemy that no military manual had prepared him for. Rabbits, thousands of them. And they won. Yes, this story is real. Napoleon Bonaparte was once attacked by a horde of bunnies. It sounds like a joke. It sounds like something out of a Monty Python skit. But it's a documented event from the early 1800s, and it offers a rare glimpse of the man behind the legend, one who, for all his genius, was still capable of being caught off guard in absurdly human ways. Let's break down what happened, why it happened, and what it reveals about Napoleon and the people around him. The bunny ambush took place sometime after the signing of the Treaties of Tilsit in 1807. Napoleon had just concluded a series of campaigns against Russia and Prussia. These treaties marked a high point in his empire building, and he was in a celebratory mood. To commemorate his victories, Napoleon's chief of staff, Alexandre Berthier, planned a grand hunt, a very traditional aristocratic way of marking success. The idea was to organize a rabbit hunt, invite Napoleon and his top generals, and let them enjoy a symbolic act of dominance. After all, what better way to blow off steam than to spend a day outside, eating well, drinking better, and gunning down some wildlife? Berthier arranged the hunt with meticulous attention to detail. He had wagons of food and wine brought in. He gathered Napoleon's inner circle, and crucially, he had several hundred, by some reports even up to 3,000, rabbits brought in for the event. That was the mistake. Rather than sourcing wild rabbits, Berthier's staff apparently purchased tame, domesticated rabbits from local farmers. This might seem like a minor detail, but it completely changed the nature of the event. Wild rabbits run away when threatened. Domesticated rabbits, on the other hand, associate humans with food. When released from their cages, they don't bolt, they follow. Especially if they've been kept in confinement and suddenly see open space, they'll run toward the nearest potential source of food or familiarity. In this case, that meant Napoleon and his men. According to several accounts, the moment the cages were opened, things took a sharp left turn. Instead of fleeing into the fields and woods, the rabbits charged toward the hunting party. At first, everyone laughed. A few rabbits running toward them seemed like a funny, harmless quirk. But then the tide turned into a flood. Dozens, then hundreds of rabbits reportedly swarmed across the field in waves, heading straight for the emperor and his entourage. It was a bunny blitzkrieg. Napoleon and his men tried to shoo the rabbits away, but they kept coming. Guns were useless. No one was prepared to shoot at point-blank range into a wall of fluffy fur. Some sources describe the rabbits leaping onto coats, clawing at boots, and trying to climb up pant legs. Napoleon himself was said to be laughing at first, then confused, and finally a little panicked. He reportedly tried to flee to his carriage, only for the rabbits to pursue him. They surrounded the emperor. His staff attempted to bat them away with riding crops and hats, but the rabbits kept advancing like a soft, twitchy phalanx. Eventually, the hunting party was forced to retreat, climbing into carriages and driving off, still chased by some of the bunnies. And that's how Napoleon Bonaparte, conqueror of Europe, was routed by a pack of rabbits. There's a simple explanation: poor planning and a total misunderstanding of rabbit behavior. When Berthier's team ordered hundreds or thousands of rabbits, they weren't thinking about how those animals would behave in an open field. The assumption was probably that they'd scatter, just like wild game. But these rabbits were accustomed to being fed by humans. When they were released and saw a group of well-dressed people with food carts nearby, they did what made sense to them. They ran straight toward the people. It also shows the absurdity of ceremonial or symbolic gestures in military culture. What was supposed to be a staged, controlled display of manly dominance over nature turned into a chaotic, slapstick farce. The military hierarchy didn't account for the basic realities of biology or animal psychology. This disconnect between image and reality is a recurring theme in imperial history, and this episode captures it in miniature. You might be wondering, did this really happen? The story has been retold many times, but the earliest known account comes from the French historian Paul Thibaudot, who served under Napoleon. Later historians and biographers such as David Chandler and Thomas Carlyle also mention it. It's cited in collections of Napoleonic anecdotes and military lore, often with wry commentary. There's no official military record of the event, of course, but it was clearly well known among Napoleon's circle, and the consistent retellings from multiple sources lend it credibility. It wasn't a myth designed to take Napoleon down. If anything, it was a funny little humanizing story in a life full of conquest and bloodshed. Think of it like the George Washington cherry tree story, but real and much funnier. As silly as it is, the rabbit attack tells us a few interesting things about Napoleon and his era. First, it's a reminder that even the most powerful men are still vulnerable to the unexpected. Napoleon could defeat coalitions of armies but couldn't handle a herd of herbivores. In that way, the bunny attack is almost poetic. Second, it highlights the absurd lengths to which imperial courts would go to manufacture pageantry. Berthier wanted everything to be perfect, but perfection, when built on false assumptions, often collapses in spectacular fashion. Third, it's a nice allegory for hubris. Napoleon believed he could control everything: the battlefield, the laws of Europe, the weather. He once blamed storms for losing a naval battle. But nature doesn't always follow your plans, especially when nature is packaged into thousands of confused, hungry, fast-moving rabbits. The incident has been largely forgotten in the grand narrative of Napoleon's life, buried under the weight of wars, reforms, and exile. But in recent years, it's enjoyed a minor resurgence on the internet. Blogs, trivia books, and even Reddit threads have unearthed the story, often using it to deflate the myth of the untouchable emperor. Some writers have even gone so far as to dramatize the event, imagining Napoleon barking orders at his generals while bunnies hop onto his lap, or drawing cartoonish illustrations of the moment the great general realized he was under siege by rabbits. It's also become a kind of shorthand for the unpredictability of life. You can be a genius, a ruler, a god among men, but some days you're going to get overrun by rabbits. It's humbling and weirdly comforting. Compared to the rest of Napoleon's legacy, the Napoleonic Code, the reshaping of Europe, the wars, the exile and return, the bunny incident is a footnote, but it's one that adds texture to the legend. We tend to flatten historical figures into either heroes or villains. Napoleon, depending on who you ask, was either a military genius or a power-mad tyrant. But the bunny story complicates that. It shows a man who, for once, didn't have a plan, a man who was out of his element, a man who, like all of us, sometimes just gets caught in a moment of total absurdity. And that might be why the story sticks, because in its sheer ridiculousness, it reminds us that even emperors are mortal and that nature has its own sense of humor. The day Napoleon was attacked by rabbits is more than just a funny anecdote. It's a historical oddity that reveals something real: the limits of control, the unpredictability of life, and the enduring power of the ridiculous. The bunnies retreated back into the fields, the emperor back into his carriage, his coat reportedly still speckled with fur. The hunt was over before it began. Napoleon would go on to win more battles, lose others, and carve his name into history, but not a single memoir ever records him planning another rabbit hunt. Maybe he learned something that day, or maybe, just maybe, he knew the bunnies were still out there, waiting. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more surprising moments from history.